The galaxy had grown accustomed to order. Centuries of treaties, alliances, and endless debates in the grand halls of the Council of Systems gave the illusion that everything was under control. In truth, the galaxy was as fragile as a crystal suspended in a storm. The Council of Systems was made up of dozens of alien species, each proud of its history, its technology, and its culture. Their halls were filled with shimmering lights, floating platforms, and devices that whispered secrets no human could understand. But in this age of vast intelligence, one species was quietly ignored: humans. They were considered minor players. Their colonies were scattered across the edge of the galaxy, small and unremarkable. Their technology seemed primitive compared to the Council's marvels. Most species believed humans were chaotic, unpredictable, and, frankly, insignificant. Yet humans had a habit of being underestimated. That had always been their secret. They observed, learned, and prepared without fanfare. While the Council species debated endlessly, humans quietly built fleets, refined technologies, and cultivated knowledge that no other species could match. On a distant, blue-green planet in the nebula rim, Commander Leora of the human Starfleet walked along the docks of the largest human orbital station. Ships of various sizes floated gracefully, their hulls glowing faintly with energy signatures the Council could not detect. Engineers moved efficiently, speaking in calm tones, aware that the galaxy outside assumed humans were still insignificant. Leora paused and looked at a young cadet beside her. "Remember this," she said, her voice steady. "Most species think we are behind the times. That's why they never see us coming. Don't forget it." The cadet nodded, eyes wide. "Yes, Commander, but won't they notice eventually?" Leora smiled faintly. "Maybe, or maybe they'll learn too late. That's the advantage of patience." Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the galaxy, the Council of Systems held another summit. The council chambers were enormous, circular, and suspended above a planet-sized energy core. Representatives from dozens of species hovered in levitation chairs, each demanding attention and recognition. "Trade routes through the Zenter cluster are unstable," complained Torvax, a reptilian ambassador with scales that shimmered like metal. "We cannot continue to allow these disruptions. Someone must act. Perhaps we should demand humans intervene," another representative suggested, a winged species with luminous feathers. "They are still the only ones who can stabilize the energy conduits." A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. The council, as always, assumed humans would respond. They always did, at least in the past, but what they did not know was that humans had quietly begun to withdraw. From the council's perspective, it was only natural that humans would continue to assist. After all, human engineers had been the silent backbone of interstellar infrastructure for decades. Hyperdrives, energy grids, AI systems, humans had made them all possible. But this time was different. In the quiet corners of the galaxy, human colonies had been preparing for self-sufficiency. Energy farms on asteroid belts, AI-controlled shipyards, and hidden research stations had all been developed away from the eyes of the Council. Humans had realized something the Council never understood: reliance could be dangerous. If the galaxy continued to rely on human ingenuity without respecting it, the consequences would be severe. And humans had a way of making lessons clear, without interference, without threats, and without malice. Back at the orbital station, Leora moved to the strategy room. Holographic maps floated above the table, showing council territories, trade routes, and energy grids. Human analysts worked silently, adjusting simulations, testing outcomes, and predicting failures before they could happen. "The council doesn't see it coming," one analyst said quietly. "They're so confident in their control, they don't realize how vulnerable everything is without human support." Leora nodded. "Exactly, and that's why we remain unseen. Our withdrawal must be complete. No warnings, no interference. Let them feel the weight of their choices." Hours later, in the heart of the council chambers, debate continued. Arguments flew like sharp blades, each species trying to outdo the others in authority and influence. Torvax growled, "If humans do not act, the Zenter cluster will collapse. Millions of ships will be stranded." A feathered diplomat flapped his wings, sending sparks of light across the room. "We cannot ask for their help. They are not our subjects. They should only act if we allow it." The council had no idea. Humans had already calculated every possible scenario. They knew how each species would respond, where failures would occur, and how the galaxy would begin to unravel, all without a single human moving a finger in visible space. In hidden human stations, simulations ran endlessly. Every council system, every energy conduit, every fleet route was analyzed. Every weakness was identified. Humans had become invisible architects of the galaxy, not by dominating it, but by preparing it to operate without their guidance. Even within the human colonies, life went on normally. Children played under the artificial skies of orbital cities. Scientists and engineers worked diligently. Farmers tended hydroponic fields. To the casual observer, humans were simply living, but in reality, they were orchestrating a silent withdrawal that would reshape the power balance of the galaxy. And then came the first sign of change, though the Council did not yet understand it. In the Nebula Rim, a supply convoy bound for a Council research outpost failed to arrive. Communications went silent. At first, the Council assumed a technical failure. Then, another convoy vanished, and another. Each time, the Council sent messengers and fleets, only to find empty systems, silent stations, and no evidence of human involvement. Panic started to creep in. The Council species prided themselves on order and control. They had always relied on humans to maintain stability. Now, for the first time, that stability was threatened. Yet humans did not interfere. They watched quietly, like stars observing a storm from millions of miles away. The withdrawal was deliberate, careful, and precise. Humans did not seek chaos. They simply let natural consequences unfold. On a distant command station, Leora looked at a holographic display showing Council reactions. The numbers were clear: system failures, stranded fleets, and rising tensions. Yet there was no joy in her eyes. There was only quiet satisfaction in knowing that the lesson would be learned without unnecessary suffering. The galaxy, humans knew, needed to understand a simple truth: underestimating humans was a mistake. Over-reliance on their support without respect could lead to collapse. And yet the humans themselves remained calm, disciplined, and fully prepared for the new era they were about to witness. As the sun of the Nebula Rim station rose over the docking bays, Leora turned to the cadet who had been watching her. "Do you see?" she asked. "We do not fight from the front. We do not demand respect. We prepare, we endure, and we act when necessary. That is how humans have survived and thrived in every corner of the galaxy." The cadet nodded, understanding at last. "We are invisible architects." "Yes," Leora said, her eyes fixed on the distant stars. "And sometimes the greatest power is the power they do not see." Far away, the Council continued its squabbles, unaware that the very backbone of their civilization was quietly stepping back. They assumed humans would intervene, as they always had. They did not yet realize that the invisible architects were preparing to teach a lesson in patience, foresight, and respect. And so, the stage was set. The galaxy would soon face challenges it had never imagined. But humans, silent and deliberate, would watch from afar. Every decision, every collapse, every desperate council move was part of a carefully orchestrated lesson. Underestimate humans, and the consequences are yours alone. The withdrawal had begun. And the consequences, though unseen, were already in motion. The galaxy had always been proud of its order. Systems connected by trade routes, fleets patrolling the stars, and the Council of Systems maintaining control made civilizations feel secure. But now that sense of stability was beginning to crack. It started quietly. Small disturbances in trade, minor energy shortages, and delayed communications were dismissed as technical failures. No one suspected that humans had begun their silent withdrawal. Yet with every passing day, the Council's reliance on human technology and expertise became more evident. In the orbit of the industrial planet Varian, Council engineers scrambled to repair a failing energy conduit. Sparks flew from the control panels, alarms blared, and the station shook under unexpected power surges. The human-designed systems were always delicate and efficient, and the Council had assumed their maintenance would continue automatically. But now, without human oversight, errors multiplied faster than any alien could fix. "The conduit is unstable," shouted Kralix, a tall insectoid engineer with 6 arms moving frantically across the panels. "If this fails, the entire sector could collapse." "Send a request to the humans," a voice suggested, calm but desperate. Kralix froze. The room fell silent, the words echoing with a bitter realization. Humans were gone. The systems that had silently maintained the galaxy's energy networks were no longer accessible. Panic began to spread like wildfire. Meanwhile, in hidden human colonies far from the Council's reach, the withdrawal continued according to plan. Leora stood on the command deck of a cloaked fleet stationed beyond the nebula rim. Holographic screens displayed the galaxy in vivid color: trade routes, fleets, energy grids, all the structures the Council had taken for granted. "They still think we'll help," Leora said quietly to her second-in-command, Commander Jalen. "They don't realize that everything they relied on is collapsing because we chose to step back." Jalen nodded. "It's almost poetic. The more they panic, the clearer their mistakes become." Leora did not smile. "It's not about enjoyment, it's about lessons. They need to understand that underestimating humans has consequences, but we will guide them if necessary, without intervening directly." The first real signs of trouble reached the Council in the form of stranded fleets. Starships that once moved smoothly through space now experienced sudden system failures. Hyperdrives misfired, navigation grids went offline, and communication networks fractured. Traders and diplomats who depended on human-managed AI were left adrift, helpless against the unforgiving vacuum of space. The Council convened an emergency meeting. Representatives arrived in their floating chairs, faces etched with worry. Torvax, the reptilian ambassador, slammed his claw against the central console. "This cannot continue. Every system we rely on is failing. Where are the humans?" A feathered diplomat flapped his wings nervously. They simply disappeared." "There is no communication, no explanation. It is as if they have vanished from the galaxy entirely." For the first time, fear replaced arrogance in the Council chambers. The species that had always felt secure now realized how dependent they had become on humans. And humans were nowhere to be found. On the industrial planet Varian, engineers worked around the clock, attempting to stabilize the conduits themselves. The insectoid Kralix and his team tried every solution their training allowed, but the systems were too advanced. Each failure led to cascading problems, threatening neighboring planets and trade networks. Elsewhere, entire sectors of the galaxy experienced similar crises. Colonies that depended on human energy grids struggled to maintain life support. Starships without human-maintained hyperdrives became stranded. Communications broke down, leaving populations isolated and vulnerable. And yet, in all this chaos, humans remained silent. They observed, prepared, and waited. Every misstep by the Council, every panic-driven decision was recorded and analyzed. Humans did not interfere. They did not rescue. They simply let events unfold naturally. In one human colony, a group of cadets studied the simulations, noting the failures. "The Council doesn't realize how fragile their systems are without us," one cadet said. They've depended on human technology for generations. Now they see what happens when it's gone. Leora nodded. And that is the point. We do not punish them, we merely withdraw. The consequences are theirs to face. Only through understanding can they learn. In the depths of space, hidden fleets observed Council attempts to recover. Starships moved frantically, trying to reconnect failing systems, but every effort exposed weaknesses that humans had anticipated. Minor errors compounded, turning manageable problems into full-scale crises. At the heart of the Council, tempers flared. Species that had long competed for influence began to blame each other. Accusations flew, alliances fractured, and political stability unraveled. "We cannot function like this," Torvax roared, scales glinting under the chamber lights. "If humans do not act, the galaxy will collapse," the feathered diplomat shook his head. "We cannot depend on them any longer. We must find our own solutions." But finding solutions without humans was harder than anyone imagined. AI systems designed by humans refused to operate correctly. Energy conduits overloaded. Hyperdrive gates malfunctioned. Communication satellites dropped from orbit. And as each problem multiplied, the humans watched quietly. Leora turned to a holographic map of the Zenter cluster, where multiple fleets were stranded. "Notice how their panic spreads," she said. "It is not immediate, but it grows like a ripple across the galaxy. Soon, the Council species will have to confront their dependence." In the midst of the chaos, some Council species began to adapt. Engineers experimented with alternative technologies, and diplomats attempted cooperation. But progress was slow. Years of reliance on human ingenuity had left them unprepared for independent problem-solving. Back on the human fleet, Leora's voice carried authority and calm. "We must remain patient. They will learn, and when they do, they will respect the value of preparation, foresight, and humility. This is the lesson we have waited to teach." Meanwhile, civilians across the galaxy felt the consequences firsthand. Trade shortages caused resource scarcity. Some colonies rationed energy and food. Starships stranded mid-space forced travelers to abandon missions. Panic spread among populations unfamiliar with self-sufficiency. But humans had prepared for this. Their colonies remained stable, hidden, and self-sufficient. Energy farms hummed, ships glided silently, and AI systems maintained order. Humans had withdrawn from the galaxy's visible networks, but internally they were thriving. The withdrawal was not about punishment. It was about teaching the Council and the galaxy that reliance without respect was dangerous. Humans had seen this cycle before. Every time, species believed they could control others without understanding the full consequences of dependence. In one cloaked observation station, Leora recorded the unfolding events. "They think the galaxy is falling apart," she said. "In reality, it is learning to operate without a crutch. They will adapt. Some will survive, some will not, but the lesson will be remembered." And yet, even in withdrawal, humans were not cruel. They intervened only minimally, rerouting emergency energy to prevent total collapse in isolated systems or preventing entire populations from starving. Every action was calculated, measured, and invisible. The galaxy would feel the consequences, but humans would not be seen as oppressors or saviors. The Council, desperate to regain control, began to reach out to other species for aid. Interventions were attempted, but coordination failed. Old rivalries resurfaced. Mutual distrust poisoned collaboration. What could have been a collective effort to stabilize the galaxy became a fragmented struggle for survival. Across the nebulae and star systems, human observation continued. Every Council failure, every desperate decision was noted. Humans learned not just from their own experiences but from the mistakes of others. In their silent withdrawal, they demonstrated a simple truth. Preparation, foresight, and unity were far more powerful than arrogance and reliance. In the command deck of a hidden human station, Leora turned to the cadets observing the galaxy. "Do you see the difference?" she asked. "They act in panic because they have never had to think independently. We prepared, we endured, and now they are learning the hard way." "Yes, Commander," a cadet replied. "It's like teaching without speaking. They feel the consequences, but we do not interfere." Leora nodded. "Exactly. And when the galaxy finally learns, it will remember this lesson. Humans do not need to dominate to be powerful. Silence, patience, and preparation are enough." As the stars stretched across the endless void, human fleets moved quietly, unseen and unchallenged. The withdrawal continued. Trade networks faltered. Energy systems failed. Starships remained stranded. Panic spread through the council, yet humans watched calmly. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, deliberately, humans had shifted the balance. They were no longer just participants. They were architects of the galaxy's future, teaching lessons in ways no council species could imagine. And so, the first wave of consequences unfolded. Systems failed, fleets stalled, colonies struggled. The council species, for the first time, faced the reality of their dependence. Humans, silent and strategic, observed everything. Every failure was a lesson, every collapse a reminder. By withdrawing, humans had proven that power need not be visible. Influence could be subtle, silent, and absolute. And the galaxy, unaware, was learning, one crisis at a time. Months had passed since humans began their silent withdrawal. The galaxy, once humming with the steady rhythm of trade and diplomacy, now felt like a machine breaking apart. Systems faltered, fleets stalled, and colonies struggled to survive without human oversight. The Council of Systems, once a symbol of authority, was in chaos. The chamber of the council had never seen such disorder. Representatives argued loudly, pointing fingers and blaming each other for the cascading failures. Torvax, the reptilian ambassador, paced furiously, scales flashing under the light. "This is unbearable," he growled. "The humans cannot simply disappear. Our systems are failing and millions of lives are at risk." The feathered diplomat, feathers ruffled with stress, flapped his wings sharply. "We must find a solution ourselves. It is humiliating, but we cannot depend on humans any longer. Our pride and our survival demand it." Pride was a dangerous thing. The council species had relied on humans for so long that independent problem-solving seemed impossible. Hyperdrive gates remained offline, energy conduits overloaded, communication networks fragmented. Even the most skilled engineers struggled against the complexity of systems humans had designed to be efficient yet precise. On a distant observation post, hidden beyond the nebula rim, human fleets watched silently. Commander Leora and her team monitored council reactions, analyzing mistakes, panic, and attempts to repair failing networks. Humans did not intervene directly. They allowed the consequences to unfold naturally. "This is where learning begins," Leora said, her voice calm. "They will feel the weight of dependence and eventually they will understand." Jalen, her second-in-command, observed a failing fleet trapped in the Zenter cluster. "It's impressive," he said quietly. "They are struggling, but they are trying. Some may survive." Leora nodded. "Exactly. The lesson is not punishment, it is awareness. They must learn to respect preparation, foresight, and the value of cooperation without reliance." In the midst of chaos, some council species began to adapt. Engineers experimented with backup systems, using older designs and improvising solutions. Diplomatic factions attempted collaboration, recognizing that survival demanded unity over pride. For the first time, they were learning to operate independently of human support. Meanwhile, the consequences of the withdrawal reached the farthest colonies. Planets dependent on human-maintained energy networks implemented rationing. Starships were stranded in deep space, forcing crews to improvise and survive with limited resources. Communication breakdowns left populations isolated, and trade shortages caused tension and unrest. Yet, human colonies remained calm, stable, and fully operational. Hidden energy grids hummed with power. Cloaked fleets patrolled quietly. AI systems continued to maintain infrastructure. Humans had prepared for self-sufficiency and were unaffected by the turmoil they allowed to unfold. One human observation station recorded an incoming distress signal from a council planet. The message described a failing energy grid, starving populations, and stranded fleets. Leora studied the holographic display. "We do not respond directly," she reminded her team, "but we can ensure that no system collapses entirely. The goal is learning, not destruction." Subtle interventions occurred, unseen by the Council. Emergency power was rerouted to prevent complete system failures. AI protocols provided minimal guidance to prevent mass casualties. Humans acted like invisible guardians, maintaining life without revealing their presence. Back in the council chambers, tensions had reached a breaking point. Delegates accused one another of sabotage and incompetence. "If humans are gone, we must solve this ourselves," Torvax growled. "But we cannot even coordinate effectively." The feathered diplomat's voice trembled. "Perhaps we have taken their help for granted. Perhaps we did not truly appreciate the humans' foresight and skill." It was a realization born of necessity. Dependence without respect had led to chaos. Now the council species faced the consequences of arrogance and complacency. The galaxy, once orderly, had become a testing ground for humility. In distant human colonies, Leora gathered cadets to observe the progress. "Notice how they adapt," she said. "Some will fail. Some will survive. But the lesson will endure. Humans do not need to control or dominate. Preparation, patience, and wisdom are enough to influence outcomes without visibility." The cadets watched the holographic displays intently. Star systems that had failed were slowly being stabilized by their own inhabitants. Fleets stranded in space found innovative ways to communicate and navigate. Energy grids began to operate using alternative protocols, and trade routes reopened slowly. "See that?" Leora said, pointing to a recovering sector. "They are learning. Humans gave them the tools for independence, and now they are discovering their own strength. That is the true measure of power, teaching without interference, shaping without domination." Even as the council species began to recover, the consequences of reliance were clear. Some planets suffered irreparable damage. Starships lost forever. Relationships between species strained to breaking points, but humans had prepared for this. They had foreseen failures and ensured that no species would face total extinction. In a quiet moment, Leora reflected on the journey of human withdrawal. "We did not act out of malice," she said softly. "We acted because we understand the value of independence. Strength is not measured by control, but by the ability to endure, adapt, and create without dependence." The Council, slowly regaining stability, reached a point of cautious cooperation. Representatives began sharing technology, knowledge, and resources. Fleets were coordinated, energy systems repaired, and communication networks restored. But the memory of reliance remained, a reminder that underestimating humans had consequences. In the distance, hidden from view, humans continued to observe. Leora noted the subtle improvements, the hesitant collaboration, and the first signs of genuine humility among council species. "They are learning," she said, "not because we intervened, but because we withdrew." Jalen added, "It is fascinating. They are discovering resilience, creativity, and unity in ways they never had before, and it all began with our silence." The galaxy was not fully healed, but it was evolving. Council species had faced challenges they had never imagined, and through struggle they were beginning to grow. Humans remained apart, unseen but ever present, guiding the galaxy not with force but with foresight. One by one, systems that had failed recovered. Fleets returned to operational status. Trade resumed cautiously. Communication networks reconnected. The galaxy was learning the consequences of dependence, and humans observed with quiet satisfaction. In the human colonies, life continued as always. Cadets trained, engineers refined technology, and scientists explored the edges of knowledge. Hidden fleets maintained observation, but humans did not reveal themselves. Their power was silent, strategic, and absolute. Leora addressed her team for the final time during this phase of withdrawal. "Remember this," she said. "Humans do not seek control. We do not fight for dominance. Our strength lies in preparation, patience, and vision. By stepping back, we teach others to find their own strength. That is true influence." Jalen smiled. "And they are beginning to see it." "Indeed," Leora replied. "Some will remember, some may forget, but the lesson is planted. One day, they will understand the value of foresight, humility, and respect." The council, humbled but recovering, finally began to recognize the depth of human strategy. They realized that humans had not been passive or insignificant. They had been silent architects of stability, withdrawers of influence, and teachers without visible intervention. In the vastness of space, humans remained quiet, their fleets cloaked, their colonies hidden. They had shown the galaxy that power does not always roar. Sometimes it observes, waits, and acts through absence. And as the stars stretched across the endless void, the galaxy understood a simple truth: underestimating humans carried consequences. But even in withdrawal, humans were present, guiding, protecting, and teaching lessons that no force or weapon could ever achieve. For the first time, the council species looked at humanity not as minor players, but as a force of subtle genius, patience, and vision. They had learned humility, independence, and the value of foresight. The withdrawal had ended, but the lesson remained. The galaxy was awake, and humans, silent and strategic, had reshaped it forever. Humans silently withdrew, leaving the council to face its own consequences.